Welcome back to the In the Clinic podcast with Rob. And if you are looking to get my best tips that I learned from 2024, well, this is the podcast for you, because in this episode, we are going to go through and discuss each one of the major tips that I picked up this year, whether it be from books, videos, in-person courses, or just experience from working with the clients in my physical therapy clinic, in the specialized strength personal training programs, or in our wellness programs. So these are the best learned tips of 2024 that I learned that I want to give to you now so that you can have the best wellness, the best fitness, the best longevity, and overall, just the best quality of life. So let's get started today. And these tips really came about because I realized after the letdown of the holidays. And at the end of the year, this is always a reset time for me to be able to go through and reflect on the year and then make plans and goals for 2025 or the next coming year. So I usually take a little bit more time off, and it gives me time to reset all of our data that we're looking to collect, but also reset our goals and priorities. So for me, this is an excellent time for reflection. And upon this reflection, I was realizing how much I've actually learned in 2024. And a lot of it has to do with the knowledge that I acquired through books. And these books really came about because I watched different videos on YouTube, on Reels as far as the short clips, and that progressed to longer clips where I gained a really deeper understanding. And usually these individuals that are imparting knowledge on the masses then follow up with, and if you want more of this, read this book or read this journal or other. And that really is my key to go and grab those books, because the people that I'm acquiring the most knowledge from, I'm looking to get the knowledge that they have, and they got it from somewhere, and it just didn't come out of thin air. So for me, I went through and realized that I've read over 20 books this year. And I didn't realize that I read that many until I actually stacked them all together. So if you want to see the best health books, because I read over 11 or 10 or 11 health books, the rest of them are all related to personal development or business. So if you want my best health books that helped shape my understanding of health, wellness, longevity from 2024, look at the preceding podcast. I went through my top, I believe, 6 books that shaped me this year with my understanding of health, wellness, longevity, or other. So today, I'm going to go through and just break down those tips. And if I went into extreme detail, this would be the longest podcast I've ever had. And I know that one of you would watch this to the end. But still, I'm looking to give you the best tips, and then you can follow up on the previous podcast where I went through the specific books. And a lot of these books is where this knowledge came from. So you can go ahead and acquire those books and start reading them just like I did. So 2024, revolutionary year for me, because we started with physical therapy to try and help people repair their injuries. And then we started moving towards personal fitness because we found that individuals, once they repaired their injuries, they're really looking for more. And it's a perfect jump off point because individuals now have regained their strength, their mobility, their function. They're looking forward on what they want in their life. And now they can actually do those. So they're at a perfect point. On top of it, they've been coming to our clinic a couple times, 2-3 times per week sometimes, for many, many weeks, which means they're already routine. The routine is already built into going to a place like ours, and they're already doing some level of fitness, strengthening others. So it's already a natural progression to move over into the fitness wellness space. So we did that, and we acquired the building next to ours. We made a training facility, and this is where we started developing our specialized strength company. So we currently have 2 personal trainers that work with us. We only do annual programs for people where we build them customized program for the full year. There's a lot of different touch points in that program to help people keep going. That's another podcast moving forward. But what I found is that we could repair people with physical therapy, and we can start a fitness program to help people with their nutrition, their weight management, their strength. But we also found that there were individuals that still had difficulty with a lot of their health metrics. And that really started me diving deep into a lot of these areas that plague our individuals that we work with, that are primarily individuals over 40, and they're very predictive. So it started me on a journey of finding the answers of why people are still having a lot of these issues, even though they're starting to correct their fitness, their strength, their nutrition. So right now I'm going to go through and give you what has really been revolutionary for me in these tips. And let's start off with number one, which is understanding the mitochondria. Now, don't immediately turn off and go, Rob's going to get into physiology, and now this is going to get super boring. The biggest thing I want to press upon with the mitochondria is that from the book, The Mitochondria and the Future of Medicine, really breaks down how the mitochondria plays the greatest factor in our health and our wellness overall. And if you look at a lot of our chronic diseases, it's because that we're getting what we're considering now mitochondrial dysfunction. And the mitochondria cannot produce the energy that's needed in our lives. And that could be either an intake of poor fuel coming in, and we can't get the electron transport um, carriers down the progression that we need to, so we can't produce energy in the end like we need to, or it could be an oxygen issue. And it doesn't mean that we don't breathe. It means that we're not using oxygen efficiently. And this is where I'll get into later about VO2 max. But just note that a lot of the chronic diseases that we get are related to the mitochondria and the breakdown in either fuel coming in or oxygen as the final receptor. So if we look at the mitochondria overall, we all technically die from the same thing, which is what? Hypoxia. And hypoxia means a lack of oxygen. So why would we all die from the same thing? Well, in the end, if we can't produce energy, meaning we don't have oxygen coming to those tissues, then those tissues eventually die. Energy stops, and we cannot continue with any of the organ systems of our body. So we all die from hypoxia, whether we get ran over by a car or our heart stops pumping. That means that oxygen from our blood cannot flow to each one of the tissues that has the cells, cannot produce energy. Everything stops. So this was revolutionary for me because in that book, it breaks down as far as how the mitochondria works. Now, I had gone through basic biology, I understood that, but to truly understand the four complexes of the electron transport chain, what oxidative phosphorylation is, how that relates to glycolysis, how the body will switch from oxidative phosphorylation to glycolysis when we don't have enough oxygen, what that means for lactic acid buildup, how that affects a lot of our systems and a lot of the chronic conditions where people talk about fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, ADHD, autism, all the way down to Parkinson's, heart disease, atherosclerosis, stroke, to Alzheimer's. I mean, there's an assortment of chronic diseases that we see as dumb luck that people get, and they're actually quite predictive on why people are getting these, but we're not understanding the physiology on how they're occurring, and that starts from the mitochondria. So number one, biggest thing I learned was how the mitochondria from a physiological level affects every system in the body. And from that root understanding has allowed me to grow in multiple areas, all the way from understanding how it imparts different vitamins, from the B vitamins, how they're essential for the mitochondrial, how to produce energy, what the role of different supplements from CoQ10, L-carnitine are all playing a factor. You know, all of these are essential for the body. And by understanding the mitochondria, it gave me a greater understanding of the depth of chronic disease. So number one, biggest thing I learned was how the mitochondria affects our health and why we have to keep it healthy. Number two, the biggest thing that really jumped out at me was seed oils. And seed oils are one of those things that is becoming more and more prevalent, in the sense that people are understanding that seed oils are not healthy for our body, and they're really creating chronic inflammation overall, and they're making us fatter. So because of that, we have to be aware that we want to eliminate seed oils overall. And there's controversy with this, because there are some individuals that will come out and say that seed oils are not bad, that it's overblown, that there's no data that really supports this, which always makes me wonder, one, do they want to be contrarian? Or B, are they getting paid? And what I mean by that is there are a ton of individuals that this is big food that has a ton of money. There are a ton of lobbyists. I think there's 3 to 4 lobbyists per congressperson in the United States. Therefore, there is huge influence to make sure that seed oils, which are extremely cheap, that are subsidized through the government, that they continue to be put into food because that means profit. So for us, why are seed oils so bad? Geez, one, it's an omega-6 fatty acid. And what the biggest thing I learned, you can look at Paul Saladino, you can look at Gary Brecka, you can look at some individuals that really have talked a lot about seed oils on their podcast. So I'd recommend you going and looking at those individuals. A lot of times it's Gary Brecka with Paul Saladino talking together about seed oils and how that plays a factor in changing our cholesterol levels, but also how it makes us fatter. It's a highly inflammatory ingredient. And at the basic level, an omega-6 is used by animals, whether we eat seeds, that as the winter starts to turn, animals start looking for seeds and eating those seeds to get those omega-6s, because those omega-6 will create more fat on your body, which is needed for an animal to go through the winter time, which when food is less abundant. But also, same thing with fructose. Fructose is animals are looking for fruits that are falling from the trees so that they can eat those in mass, because fructose is also going to create more fat on the body as well. So when you look at those two ingredients, it was hugely revolutionary for me to open my eyes to realize, wow, seed oils are a huge problem. And what truly opened my eyes is go look at every packaged food. There's some type of sunflower, safflower, canola oil, vegetable oil. There's some type of a seed oil in each one of these packaged ingredients because it's extremely cheap. So then if you really want to open your eyes, go onto YouTube and look at how canola oil or some of these oils are made. They're usually poisonous from the source, and they have to be um, chemically changed, or they have to be bleached or other, just to make them so that they're not poisonous to our body. So all in all, get away from seed oils, move to avocado oils, move to extra virgin olive oil, tallow, butter, move to coconut oil. These are all oils that won't have the same inflammatory effects, won't create the same level of fat on your body, and overall will keep you healthier. So number 2 was seed oils. The third one that really jumped out was when I started to investigate hormones. I wanted to really go into the hormonal changes that men go through and women go through, because when we work with people that are 40 and older, we typically find that individuals start going through a lot of changes after 40. For women, it's menopause, but for men, there's a lot of changes in testosterone levels. So understanding hormones was critical. And the number one that jumped out for me is the role that estrogen is playing in our lives for men and for women. And what I'm really talking about is understanding the role that estrogen changes in the bodies for female after menopause, and for women that get hysterectomies, that get different procedures, how that estrogen changes in their lives and what estrogen's role is. Understanding the role of estrogen as well as progesterone and how they play off each other, that's everly essential as well. Estrogen and how that relates to cortisol and how cortisol relates to progesterone, that was everly essential as well. Because now you can truly understand how women can go through a different pattern in their life that truly affects their health. So what do I mean by that? Well, when you have a rise in estrogen in your body, it naturally is going to dull progesterone. These two work off of each other. So now women are getting what? A rise in a lot of tissue growth, because estrogen creates tissue growth, which is needed for ovulation. So if you look at estrogen overall, women are getting endometriosis, an overgrowth of tissue in the uterus or outside the uterus. You've got adenomyosis, overgrowth of tissue in the uterus. You look at breast as far as tissue development. You're getting more cyst development and firmer breasts or nodules in the breast tissue of women. Okay, all these are related to overgrowth from too much estrogen in the body. Well, why would we be getting too much estrogen? Why does that matter? Okay. Well, we're getting a lot of contaminants in our body that are called xenoestrogens that mimic estrogen and the role that it plays in the body. And then it augments the amount of estrogen that's produced in our body. And this goes for men and women. But why does that matter? Well, I talked about the overgrowth, but you're also looking at decreased fertility for men and for women. Women are getting more polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is directly related to insulin resistance, but also related to estrogen levels. For men, there's a decrease in fertility overall. Men are seeing less sperm count. They're seeing uh, uh, more fat development on their body. Men's testosterone levels are dramatically going down. Why? Well, understanding what estrogen is doing in the body for men and women was essential for me, but also understanding why we're getting so much more estrogen, because there's so many contaminants. If you look at food, BPO or a BPA is in a ton of lining of cans. You'll see that. That's a xenoestrogen. All of the things that we put on our skin, from hair products to lotions to soaps to detergents, all these have sulfites. They have parabens, phthalates. These are all xenoestrogens. So when you start looking at everything that we're putting in our body, even things that we're smelling from candles, from scentsy types, smelly goods, these are all predicated on putting different xenoestrogens in them to help hold the scent, the fragrance, or to keep them from breaking down in time. So these xenoestrogens we have to be aware of and try and eliminate from our body. So for our clients, I went through and made a guide for our premier personal training clients, on a guide on all the things that they need to remove from their lives that have to do with increasing estrogen levels. So I put a lot of time into estrogen right there, but please note that estrogen, we want to have a balance between estrogen and progesterone. For men, we want to have testosterone to estrogen balance. We don't want to have a predominance of estrogen in our body as a man or a woman, because it wreaks havoc on our hormone system. And overall, that's what we're getting. We're getting hormone dysregulation from an overabundance of these xenoestrogens. So start working to eliminate those from your body. The next thing that I learned that was pivotal for me was understanding medicine 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. I actually did a podcast on this, and this was from Peter Attia in his book Outlive, and he was great in understanding how medicine 1.0 had to do with just understanding basic medicine and realizing that we can collect different symptoms together to make a disease and say this is the disease, possibly looking at just understanding germ theory and maybe sterilizing our instruments. That was kind of medicine 1.0. Medicine 2.0 is really taking a step forward that says, hey, we've got a cluster of symptoms, and all these together always make this disease. So if these symptoms make a disease, now we can understand how to possibly treat the disease. And from that, we've developed different medicines, from penicillins to other, to help cure a disease itself. But he dives deeper into medicine 3.0, which means that we already understand all the collection of symptoms and the reason people get these diseases. How about we just prevent it in the first place? And he really dives deep into how we are really slow to progress to medicine 3.0, where we just prevent all diseases, and we're really bad at chronic diseases overall as a medical community, because medicine 2.0 has kept us in that position of dependency, where essentially if it comes in a pill, it's considered medicine, and if it comes in a pill, it fixes us. But chronic disease is the worst for us, because medicine never really cures chronic disease. It just continues to delay it, or just keeps it as status quo. And the example would be diabetes has metformin. Well, we don't have less diabetes, we have more of it. Depression has antidepressants. We don't have less depression, we have more of it. ADHD has different ADHD meds. Now we have more ADHD. There's no part of chronic disease that leads to less of an incidence. There's no curing, is essentially what he's saying. So we have to cure it essentially by preventing it. And that's what medicine 3.0 is. And that's what we try and do in all of our wellness systems, in our physical therapy to our personal training or our wellness worlds. So understanding really health span, our quality of life, and what we're looking for in longevity in medicine 1, 2, and 3.0 was great. That dovetails into longevity. And with longevity, again, Peter Attia goes through this really well. There's a couple other books that I read on longevity. They all went hand in hand. And when we're looking at longevity, we're really looking at three main metrics. And the three main ones that we press upon are muscle. That's a longevity organ. That was great from Gabrielle Lyons from Forever Strong. She talks about that and how that relates to longevity. Number two is VO2 max, understanding VO2 max and the role that oxygen has in the body. That played a huge factor with understanding it from the physiological standpoint, how we create energy from ATP and that role that oxygen plays. So VO2 max, the one that opened my eyes there, is realizing that I'm watching 80-year-old ladies try and walk up the bleachers at my daughter's basketball game, and the first couple steps are okay, but the last couple steps they can't hardly make it. Their husband's holding their arm, they're grabbing the railing, and that's VO2 max. And it was an eye opener to me to realize from Peter Attia's book that after the 40th decade in life, the fourth decade, about 40, we start decreasing in our VO2 max by 16% per decade. So you can then draw a line that says, if I want to be able to hike up a 3% hill by the time I'm 80, well, if my VO2 max is here and I'm going to drop down 16% per decade, I can draw a line to decide if I'm actually going to be able to do that at that age if my VO2 max predictively declines. So it really touches on how we have to get better at improving our VO2 max with age, and not just strength, not just building muscle mass, but also a VO2 max. So the first one, muscle. Second, VO2 max. The third one is metabolic. And this is where I talk a lot about with our clients. And this is where we break down that the metabolic health really determines your longevity, because your metabolic health comes down to a lot of your chronic conditions. We're really talking about how the mitochondria uses fuel to create energy with oxygen. So if we have a breakdown in our metabolic health, we're going to get diabetes, fatty liver disease, high blood pressure, progressive triglyceride levels. We're going to get heart disease, atherosclerosis. We're going to get Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, an assortment of chronic diseases that lead to premature death. So understanding longevity, the biggest thing I liked from his book as well is the Centenarian Decathlon, which is if you at 100 make a list of all the top 10 things that you want to be able to do, well, start training for them now. And then you'll be able to do them. If you never lose them, you'll still be able to do them. So that was pivotal for me is understanding longevity. The next one was insulin resistance. This goes hand in hand with the mitochondria and chronic disease. Great book that I read on why we get sick, and it goes through insulin resistance. It dovetailed with other books from that I read. Eat to Beat was a great one that touches on insulin resistance. But a lot of these books, Good Energy by Callie and Casey Means, that was a great one that touched on insulin resistance and how all these are creating just inflammation in our body. And it now gives me better ammo to be able to communicate with our clients on how to improve their overall health, because a lot of it comes down to insulin resistance. So that was a pivotal one. The next thing this year I learned a ton on was the Superhuman Protocol. And this is really looking at three main factors, three main modalities that are all stacked together that optimizes function of the body. And from my research in the mitochondria, it naturally progressed into, well, how do we naturally improve this? And it went from grounding, it went from breath work, it went from sunlight with near infrared light. So because of those, it progressed me to, well, how do we clinically do this? If we could improve our health and we could improve our overall metrics of longevity, if we can do that through grounding, breath work, sunlight, well, is there something clinical out there that can help as well? And that broke me down to the root of searching for something that will help our clients from a wellness standpoint. And that led me to the Superhuman Protocol, which is essentially that. It's taking grounding, breath work, and near infrared light and putting it on steroids in a very clinical and progressive manner. So this allows individuals to actually get all the elements that they need to restore order to the body and produce energy at mass. And again, if we're looking at why we get sick, well, a lot of it is because of the lack of mitochondrial efficiency. So, if we want to improve it, this superhuman protocol puts it on steroids and allows it to do it clinically. So this has been a game changer for our clients. It's been a game changer for me. It's been a game changer for longevity. So our response from our clients and our community has been transformational. We're continuing to progress to a point where I'm going to fill up and not have any room available on the schedule for new clients that want to do the superhuman protocol. So for me, it has been a great addition to understand truly how to affect longevity and wellness. And this goes hand in hand for anybody that has chronic inflammation in their body. They have a ton of pain that's in their body, that they have brain fog, dementia issues, ADHD, Parkinson's, to neurological disorders, to heart problems, diabetes. All these things are mitochondrial efficiency issues. It's all metabolic. So if we can improve our metabolic system through the superhuman protocol, game changer in what we can do for individuals. So this has been revolutionary. I'll have more of this to continue to come. I know that I keep putting out podcasts that relate to the benefits of the superhuman protocol in your lives. So just note that was revolutionary for me to be able to bring that into our clinic and change the game, not just from a fitness or nutritional or a rehab standpoint, but from a wellness standpoint that actually is getting to the root of chronic disease. So superhuman protocol, game changer. The next one that really changed the game for me was understanding um, how farm and food, big pharma and big food, have really infiltrated our government to the point that it's very, very hard for individuals to prevent premature death. And I'm a capitalist. I believe that it is the best form of um, monetary system that allows people to flourish. You have individuals all the time in this country that go from dead broke to millionaires solely because of their drive, ingenuity, and knowledge, by acquiring knowledge, that hunger. So we see it all the time. The downside of capitalism is that money is the source. Money is the whole metric that we determine success by. And it's easy to see how that need for generating profits for shareholders, for all the individuals at play, has led to a corrosion of our um, Food and Drug Administration, the policies that are being made by legislators, and how this has trickled down to create massive chronic disease for our community, for our relatives, and our country as a whole. So the book, Good Energy, the podcast that they put out with multiple entities from Modern Wisdom to others, they've really broken down from the medical establishment side all the way down to the lobbyist side on how the game is played to truly muddy the water so that health is not the primary determining factor when we make policy. It really comes down to money. And so this was a game changer so that I could, could actually be more honest with my approach to health, wellness, fitness. Because if for me, I've never been a conspiracy theorist. I didn't like to put the tinfoil on my head and to say that the sky is falling. But this is overwhelming evidence. It's overwhelming to see how policy that is made from the government shapes what we do as a country, and how it's then very hard for us to avoid a lot of the foods, the ingredients that are infecting our bodies. And what really opened my eyes is to look that in Europe, there's about 800 different ingredients that are banned, that in the United States are not. So other countries are more rigid on it, and that creates less chronic disease in other countries than ours. So hopefully there's going to be a change, a ground swelling. I can feel that there's a change in the pulse of the country of what we want for health, but it's going to have to start at the governmental level. So we'll see what happens there. The next layer that really changed the game for me this year was understanding how we can improve our health through the things that we do. So I mentioned before the grounding, the breath work, and the light. Now these are things that everybody can do in their daily life. The grounding by putting your feet on the dirt, the soil outside daily, 10-15 minutes helps remove any excess electrons that are built up in our body. That connects us with the earth. That's not voodoo granola stuff. That's actually stuff built on research that shows how that helps improve circulation in our body and improves our overall health. Number two, when you combine it with breath work, what that does for us from an emotional standpoint, a physiological standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, revolutionary. And then the third, truly what changed the game for me is understanding how important near infrared light is from the sun to our body. And if you look at what COVID did for elderly individuals, for African Americans, for Hispanics, it showed us the importance of sunlight, because with COVID, the people that had the hardest time with the COVID virus were the ones that couldn't get as much near infrared into the body that helps with immunity and helps fight off disease, helps with overcoming the oxidants in our body. So understanding the role that melatonin plays, not from a sleep cycle circadian rhythm, but actually when the sun is out and that near infrared hits our cells of the mitochondria in the body, and the mitochondria produces melatonin on demand. That melatonin is the cooling agent to the heat that is produced, which is the oxidants, the free radicals in our body. And we have to naturally tamp down and stop those free radicals from proliferating. Otherwise, it's going to run really wild in our body, and it's looking to oxidize other tissues, which means it's going to pull an electron off some healthy cell, and that's now going to be an unstable cell. And that leads to overgrowth of cancers, and that leads to inflammation. And now our immune cells are having to put a high amount of troops in that area to try and stop inflammation. So if that happens to the body overall, a lot of individuals are stuck in these chronic inflammatory autoimmune states because they can't break out of them because there's such a massive amount of inflammation being produced. And a lot of that could be because they're not producing enough melatonin to overcome the oxidants produced in the body. So this really showed from a video that I watched on YouTube from a tenured professor in California. I think it's California, Riverside, if I remember right, and he breaks down the role that melatonin plays, how that played a factor in COVID, how the people in the most northern hemispheres where they get the less sunlight were hit hardest with COVID, how the individuals with the darkest skin, from African Americans to Latinos, got hit hard with COVID because they weren't able to get the near infrared light onto their body to produce the melatonin needed to help with antioxidant functioning. So this was a game changer, and it was one of the catalysts for me to bring the Superhuman Protocol into my clinic, because now you're getting on demand near infrared light and multiple wavelengths. So overall, understanding grounding, breath work, sunlight, how they're all pivotal. The sun is not bad. It actually is necessary for the body to generate health. So as I round this up, there's a couple more areas that really changed the game for me. One was supplements. Understanding, I was never much of a supplement guy. I might take some protein powder. I might mainly take protein powder, sometimes creatine for fitness. But understanding truly what each one of these vitamins or these ingredients are doing in our body and why. So some of those that really jumped out at me was CoQ10, understanding in the mitochondria, in the complex that moves the electron from one complex to the other, that you have to have CoQ10 in mass, same as PQQ in mass, in order to move those electrons over. If you don't, then you get a buildup of those electrons, you get more free radicals, and then you get more inflammation in your body or dysfunction. So you've got to have CoQ10, and understanding a lot of this is coming from the meats that we eat. That was huge. L-carnitine, in order to metabolize fatty acids and bring them into the cells, we've got to have L-carnitine as the carrier to bring it across the membrane. So having enough L-carnitine in the body was pivotal. Our B vitamins, understanding the B vitamins, and we look at the Krebs cycle and how the Krebs cycle is functioning, that was absolutely essential for me to understand why B vitamins lead to more energy in your body and why they're essential. Even creatine, how creatine replaces the phosphorus that we need in order to make ADP turn back into ATP. Well, we have to have enough phosphorus to make that third phosphorus on the adenosine triphosphate. So understanding the role of creatine on how that plays and how that's essential. Other vitamins, going down on how do we improve our testosterone levels? How do we change estrogen and drive down estrogen in our body? Things like chasteberry to help with progesterone for females. The role that vitamin D3 plays in our body and how we need to have vitamin D3 plus K2 so we actually get that calcium delivery into the bones and not into the carotid arteries or the arteries of the body and creating calcification. Other things like zinc, selenium, how these are necessary for men to produce testosterone, the role that D3 plays in DHEA and hormone development, and why that's essential. Understanding how our hormones are created from DHEA to all the way down to produce estrogen or progesterone to testosterone. That was important to have those raw ingredients available. So a lot of these supplements, I didn't realize the impact that they need in our body. And if we're not getting them in mass, it's hard to produce the energy or the function that we need, which leads to a lot of inflammation in our body. So understanding why we're taking these supplements was pivotal for me in 2024 and has gave me greater depth to actually help the people that are looking for the same guidance that I am. Other honorable mentions that changed my outlook of health this year. One was understanding our genes. So dirty genes, looking at how we methylate our ingredients, how we take raw ingredients and move it into actual usable source in our body, things like folate, things like cobalamin, so B9, B12, how we use those in our body and why, if we can't use them properly, it leads to anxiety, it leads to high blood pressure. That was pivotal. Understanding our methylation cycle and how that plays a factor with different gene variants, from the MTHFR gene variant to the COMT gene variant, why some individuals then will have a high motor and will want to always stay busy. That's a gene variant potential. Why some individuals are hotheads and they can't ever let anything go and it stays with them. And when they get mad and see red, it's with them for a long, long, long time. And what that has to do with our catecholamines and how that's breaking down either slow or fast. That was pivotal for me. But understanding our genes was another layer so that we can get the right raw ingredients into our body that will help with certain things like our anxiety, with our high blood pressure, with a mind that won't relax, a body that won't relax. This was all really pivotal because it was another layer to truly help people at a deeper level, whether it's my family members, whether it's my clients, or whether it's myself. That was transformational. Last little bit that really helped me bring together understanding this year was as far as looking at ancient medicine. So I read a book by Josh Axe on ancient remedies and understanding how Chinese medicine has been around for 3,000 years, or Ayurveda through the Indian ancient medicine. These have been tested on humans for years and years and years and years. And a lot of times we want to downplay anything that doesn't come from a U.S. pharmaceutical company. But a lot of the stuff has eventually become researched by U.S. companies, and then they pill form it and say, yeah, it's valid. But a lot of this is herbs, spices that you can get for a very, very cheap amount. So there's not a high incentive to go through and investigate a lot of these herbs, spices that you can put naturally into your body. And then you can avoid all the side effects from the different pharmaceuticals. So that was a game changer in understanding health at another level, because it helped you look at the things that you can apply already in your life without the side effects to get the result that you want. And part of this is understanding how the body can heal itself with similar like ingredients. So it talks about like wants like. So a poor functioning liver, by eating liver, will help improve your liver overall. A poor functioning heart, by eating heart, has a high concentration of mitochondria and CoQ10 in it, and that helps with our overall health of our heart. So understanding like wants like was really key for me in understanding wellness. And then also to be able to pull from this ancient remedies book, to be able to look at different conditions, from acne to poor functioning liver to uh, energy balances. This gave me an actual blueprint to jump off from and say, hey, here's a pathway that we can start applying to our lives, and we don't immediately have to jump into pharmaceuticals that have a lot of negative side effects, and then you're potentially on for the rest of your life. So the Ancient Recipes, Joshua Axe, was another great book that helped add more tools to my toolbox for 2024 to not just shape my own health, my own wellness, but for my family members, my friends, but also the clients that we have in our clinic. So overall, that's a summary of 2024. There was a lot of different books that I read, and I could go deeply into each one of these, and possibly I will in 2025 from different podcasts that I can put out. But overall, please note that knowledge is not power. And this was a great quote that I read in the last book that I read. Knowledge is not power. The application of proper knowledge is power. And that's the key part, because a lot of times we go and we decide to read books and to grab knowledge only because it's fun. It's fun to learn new things. But if we don't actually apply the knowledge that we're gathering together, then we fall short in the application, which means there is no power behind it. So please note as we move forward that if you are like me and you want to continue to grow in your health and your wellness, your longevity, that you've got to not see knowledge as power. It's the application of the right knowledge is power. So take some of these books, look at my last podcast that I did on the top 6 books that I read for my health in 2024. Start reading those books. But then also what I like to do, I go through and I actually underline every part in every page that I like that is triggering to me. And then I go through and I actually do a full detailed note outline of that book, so that it's easier cliff notes for me to go right into the book and understand that part that I'm missing. And it helps add to my knowledge acquisition that I can bring in better recall by doing that. So for you, you might have your own strategies, but just remember, the proper knowledge with the proper application is what we want to achieve. So hopefully this podcast today helped give you a little jump start on ways that you can start improving your health and your wellness and your fitness and your longevity, because that was the idea. So thanks for watching today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please just hit the subscribe button. That helps as far as the depth of other people that get this type of information out to them, to their ears, just like you. So thanks again for joining me. May your health be improved and long, with a high health span as you progress in your life. See you next time.